This is Jeff Krisman, and I'm very joyous and tremendously grateful to have the opportunity today to be visiting with Monica Carless. Monica, thank you so much for taking the time with me. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for having me on, Jeff.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've had an opportunity to just, to read a little bit about you. And I realize reading about someone is very, very different from having the opportunity to really hear from people in their own words, what their experiences have been. So I'm very excited to have the opportunity to be here to listen today. And I was going to basically, before we started that, I wanted to take a moment and just through the process of learning some about you, I wanted to take a moment and really honor your own journey. And I read there was a phrase that you'd used that really jumped out at me. It really spoke to me was, taking the road less ordinary. And so I definitely look forward to no expectations, but I look forward to hearing, you might share about that. And then, of course, the work, and of course, you're welcome. And then, of course, the work that you're doing with people and have done with people to help them. And I don't know, I don't want to limit it to this, but this is just that I get the sense in your work that you help guide people to rewild the soul through fearless authenticity. And so that's certainly something I look forward to learning more about and hearing your perspective on that as well. And I apologize. I know this was a little bit of a longer introduction. Yeah. And I wanted to start off, if I could ask you, just kind of going very broad on this at first, or looking at it very broadly, if I could ask you just in your own words, what your journey and the work that you have done with people means to you at a deeper level.
Thank you. Well, I'm on the inside a very private person, and I try very hard to kind of be in the background of things. But my soul's purpose is very much to help others and myself to attain that fearless authenticity and to remember our own wildness. And so it's been this kind of crossroads that I've always been at, to preserve my own privacy and my own, just my intimacy with myself, but also be able to share myself. And so I realized at some point in time, that I really couldn't help anybody if I was just sitting in my cave, ruminating and, writing my own things and keeping it all to myself. I knew that sooner or later I'd have to come out and be seen or be heard or be read, because that writing is really like my main best way of teaching that I'm most comfortable with. And there are many years where I was very afraid of even just being in my own skin, or I didn't visualize the world as a safe place to be, or even my own body to be a safe place to be. And there was reasons for that, why my life turned out that way, why I felt that way. But then I realized that I was really doing myself a disservice, and how could I expand past this fear that I had? And the problem that I had really was that people liked me. I was like, they kept asking me to come speak at different things, or you participate in ceremony at different things. And in the end, I couldn't avoid it. I had to just step out into my own beingness. And I realized that if I felt this way, if I felt that I was afraid to be in my own skin or to be in the world, and didn't feel that the world was a safe place, then others must feel that way too. And I thought the best way for me to work with that was just to share who I was. And then in the end, it turned out that it wasn't so terrible at all.
Wow, I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really do appreciate that. I find that so interesting that these invitations. I don't know if that would be an appropriate word. That these invitations, for you to go out in the world and share these things and share, who you are, and sharing yourself. I find that so interesting how things happen that way.
Yeah. It was absolutely exactly what my soul needed to actualize, and for me to really embody myself, in my human form.
Yeah, and I love that. And I will say to you that really resonates, because I found that has been at least, not that this is about me, but that certainly resonates, because I have certainly
Mm,
found on this journey that that is what so much of this has been about. Not all of it, but certainly a very, very formative part of this journey.
mm. And I really feel like the world would be a safer place if we could relate to each other. If we could understand each other's worries or fears or even our joys and our expressions, if we could get together on that and just realize that you're just another me and I'm just another you, I think there would be more of a peaceful, society.
Yeah, and I was wondering too if that sometimes, I know that having that realization that we're all one. It's
Mm,
one thing to feel to feel that or internalize that or to think it, but I wonder if once we step out the door and we go out into the world with other people, if that's really
mm.
where it becomes challenging to to be able to really feel that, and to feel safe in that.
I think so. And I think it's kind of like taking it from your head or from your intellectual idea of what it means to be one with another person or one with the world. But then when you go out into the world, I think you have to really take it into your heart, because if you step into that with your mind, it'll be difficult because people look different than you. They feel different than you. There's different cultures, and when we don't understand something, we're afraid of it. And so, but if you enter that in the world with your heart, then I think that's when it becomes a lot easier, because you're not thinking your way through the process and you're not approaching another person so much with your intellect, but with your beingness. And then you realize, wait a minute, I'm just like another fragment of energy, just like they're a fragment of energy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then I was going to ask you as well. In fact, I saw a quote today, and I can't necessarily remember it verbatim, but it was something along the lines of how, in some ways, that that there is this, and I'm trying to even think about the best way to characterize this, but it's coming up intuitively based on what you're sharing, that somehow there's a need for us to be out in the world with other
Mm,
people, and because of the fact that that also basically shines light on some of the shadows and some of the
mm.
the darker things that we sometimes, or the darker aspects that we can't really see. Not saying dark in the sense of it being necessarily bad or wrong,
Yeah,
but just
yeah.
maybe really shining some light on those the various shadows that we sometimes
Mm.
can't see when we're just safely in a cave by ourselves, so to speak.
Yeah, and as in like my soul's mission this lifetime is to be, I've come in as an empath, and empaths have a difficult time with the world because we're taking everything personally. And really, if we just take ourselves out of the way and realize that we're just basically the conduit, like here comes the pain of the world and we're here, we're the conduit, and at the other end comes out something wonderful and peaceful and loving, but we don't have to absorb it. But for many years, I really struggled with that and I really wanted to be invisible. And I would like even practice to be a shapeshifter. I tried to shapeshift into a deer and be very quiet and unseen and, and just gentle in the world. But I didn't want altercation and I didn't want to be seen as somebody who was stirring anything up in the world either. And this whole thing really wasn't serving me at all. And it wasn't serving anyone else at all either, because one, I couldn't activate my gifts or my soul gifts in the world. Nobody could relate to me because they were like, well, she doesn't want to be bothered. So that put up a barrier.
Yeah.
And and then I just realized, out of my fear, if I just retreated into my own safe space, like my cabin in the woods, which I'm a proponent of cabins in the woods. But
Oh,
if
yeah. Yeah.
but like how could I be effective in the world if I remain there all the time? Like some people can, usually when they're dead and they have written these books and now their books are popular after they're dead, they can be very effective with their words that they've written in the world. But I'm alive and I need to be effective right now.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, for you, has this been in this journey, getting more of a sense of balance between the two of those things, or finding
Hmm.
the balance that works for you in terms of still honoring your need for solitude and your need to be able to recharge and have your own space, but then at the
Yeah.
same time also kind of go back out into the marketplace, so to speak, at times.
Yeah, exactly. And so honoring that, if I don't honor that part of me that needs the solitude, and I do need a great amount of solitude to be able to produce anything, and I do produce something every day that I try to share with the world, but like on my socials and whatnot. But I need then the rest of the day to be, a lot of the time by myself, and then other times, where I need extended periods of silence or solitude. But yes, if I don't balance that with what is my service, or how am I expressing myself on the planet, then again I've created that barrier, and I can't relate to anyone, and no one can relate to me except other hermits.
I love that. Yeah, that definitely, I can definitely identify with that one. Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a journey though, Jeff. It's been really a journey of um, loving myself more and loving myself enough to be seen.
Wow, thank you so much. That's
Mm.
speaking to me, and I definitely appreciate that. And
Mm.
that's something I've definitely not known all my life. I can say, and I certainly
Mm.
had not internalized it. And I
Mhm.
really appreciate that. I didn't want to make any assumptions here at all, but I didn't know if there is anything. I was thinking about maybe looking back a little bit, but there again,
Mhm.
there's no expectation on that in terms of what you would have to share. I didn't know if there's anything that you might speak of just in earlier years, anything
Mm.
that that you could relate to the work that you're doing today, and the
Mm.
transformation and that you have experienced over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that invitation. I was born in.
I love it.
I will begin there. I was born in Poland
Oh, wow.
when it was a communist country still, many moons ago. And I lost my parents by the time I was 5. And I found out later in my life that my dad had taken his own life, which, was a really kind of startling realization. But I had so much love and empathy for him when I did find out. I just felt like, wow, I didn't know, and I couldn't be there for you.
Mm.
And then I was adopted by a first cousin of my mother's. And so when I was adopted, I was sent over to Canada because that's where my new family was. And so I flew over by myself. I left behind everything, like my culture, my people, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who was looking after me, who I loved very much, and just basically everything I knew. And I was 8 years old, so I was, you know, pretty darn young. And after that adoption process, kind of everything went south. I was, it wasn't good. It was a very challenging and abusive and startling, just confusing time in my life. But something that I did have that really helped me was, even at like 9 years old, I had the consciousness, or I don't know what to call it, but maybe consciousness, to understand that I'm 9 years old, but when I'm 18 years old, I don't have to be here anymore. I can. So now I'm counting up on my fingers, like how many
Mm.
years is that? And I made like a commitment to myself that I wasn't going to let this break me, and I was going to just move through it. And then when it was done, I was going to go away and I was going to start living. Basically, that's how I saw it. And it's very interesting because I really see that as this amazing gift from somewhere, like from ancestors or knowledge or wisdom from past lives or the divine, whoever. However, I got that wisdom to know that this isn't forever. I can survive this. I'm not going to let this break me. And then I'm going to move on. And that's what happened. And then, I went into my life, and one thing that really, really did save my life, though, was books. I was like a voracious reader. As soon as I learned how to speak English and read English, I was like, okay, I'm off to the library. And I found so much solace in reading. And I discovered so many worlds outside my own. And that really helped me because I knew then that there is there are different ways of existing than what I'm experiencing right now. And so I knew that I could create something else of my life, and I didn't have to stick with this template that I had been served up. And I thought, who the heck are these people? Like, why am I here? And so I think that reading and writing really, and being in nature, like I could get lost in the woods. My parents had a summer house uh, away from the city, and so I would go there and spend a lot of time in the woods, and I understood myself there. That's where I knew that I was real. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
I didn't feel real in my body when I was in the circumstances of my childhood, but when I was in the woods, I felt real. I knew that there was something that was speaking to me there. And again, I feel so incredibly grateful for that, because um, how else would I have survived? Like, I didn't meet really any other people who could support me, like in terms of teachers or whatnot, you know, without getting into the, hairy details of my childhood. I was pretty solitary because I was kept solitary. Um, so there was nobody really to support me, and I didn't trust adults anyway. You know, I figured, oh, this is an adult and they're bad, so ergo, all
Oh
adults,
yeah.
yeah. And so, being able to read about other worlds and other cultures and other experiences just basically kept me going until I got out into the world on my own. And then I was able to start, you know, does that answer the question?
Oh, absolutely. Definitely. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to apologize too, because I know when you were starting, I didn't realize it really happened, and without me even thinking about it or engaging the brain. But when I was asking you about how your journey started, and I remember you saying that I was born in, and for
Yeah.
some reason I felt like, or I sensed, as you said that, I sensed that there was a message there of sorts. And
Mm.
I do apologize. It didn't become apparent to me until after you had repeated the sentence that you were basically speaking about where you were born
Yeah.
geographically. But it was so odd that as you said that, I just got this, like, this intuitive flash that
Mm.
this was you, just, this happened and you
Mm.
found yourself here. And so that's why I found myself, it just really spoke to me. And so I apologize. I
Mm.
did not mean
Oh, that's
to
okay.
interrupt you
That's
at
okay.
all, but
That's okay.
it felt like there was some sort of message of sorts. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? That was really like a very strong foundation for me. Like those first 18 years of my life was a huge foundation for who I was to become, because that was my trauma. That was my wounding. That was the thing that was going to crack me open and bring out whatever wisdom I had, whether it was going to come through from past lives or what I'd learned in this lifetime. We're always that seed that gets to be cracked open by something. And that made me so incredibly grateful for my childhood. I wouldn't want to repeat it, and I don't want anybody else to experience it. But that was where the seed of me was buried, and I had to like sprout myself up, and I had to, grow myself into something through that. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. And there were also great moments. There were also wonderful moments in my childhood, except that the other ones kind of overshadowed them.
Oh yeah, and I deeply honor you you sharing
Mm.
this in terms of how your life started, and getting a sense of some of these experiences, and the in terms of the challenges. And I
Mm.
definitely, and I mean my heart goes out to you, to
Mm.
just based on what you were sharing. And I wanted to ask
Yeah.
you, as far as going into adulthood, were there any, and there again I don't want to assume anything, were there any specific turning points where you began to, that led you, or any clues that you would
Mm.
ultimately be doing the work that you're doing? Or it would just be interesting to
Yeah.
just to get some sense of just anything, as far as anything formative, along that journey.
Yeah. So one thing that happened, well, I was raised Catholic, but then I kind of defected to the Protestants when I was a young adult. And then through my journey through the church, I kept feeling this dissonance. I kept feeling, I feel one way when I'm like with these spiritual teachers, and another way when I'm in the forest. And the forest thing is really messing with my church thing, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So then I went, then I tried to talk to my pastor about it, and he said, like, don't worry about it. Like, just stop thinking about it, and stop going to the woods, for heaven's sake. But there was this deep call within me to just go into the woods and stay there, metaphorically, until I came out who I really was, instead of looking for my spirituality in the teachings of others or whatnot. I was going to go within myself. And so I did that. I metaphorically kind of went into the woods, and also physically. And when I came out, I realized, wait a minute, I am a witch, and I've been a witch many times. And I started the journey of understanding what that meant in my life, and what it meant and what my work would be. And because I already had this massive mother wound within me that had already cracked me open, I started very much relating to Earth Mother, because that she was my source when I didn't have, like, my birth mother and my adoptive mother and I, were at odds. Although she was a beautiful human being too. It's just that we were like two rocks clashing together. So at some point in time, I realized I have to stop pretending that I'm this good Christian woman, and just embody this other part of me that has been like screaming to come out. And as soon as I did that, I remembered a bunch of past lives.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then I remembered a lot of persecution. And so when that happened, I was really very careful not to go back and to get all caught up into what happened before in other lives. I was just like, okay, this is something I can learn from, but it's not going to be something I'm going to get caught in and say, oh, it was so bad back then. I've been, burnt at the stake 12 times and, blah, blah, blah. So that kind of set me up for a lot of courage, because I realized, you know what? I've been through this crap before. I've been persecuted before. I've been misunderstood before. I've been afraid before to like really come out with who I was. I was also discovering my sexuality, and I realized, hey, wait a minute, I'm not heterosexual. All those like girls that I had crushes on when I was a girl and then as a young woman, that could mean something. And then I had this annoying habit of falling in love with more than one person at a time. And so this whole journey evolved into me understanding myself as, I'm bisexual, I'm polyamorous, I can love more than one person at a time. I'm deeply connected to the earth, and I need to move my life through the cycles. Like I'm very connected to the moon. And so then I started to understand myself through this lens. And then I started meeting people who were curious, that were like, oh, I heard you give this talk about being bisexual. I heard you say the word witch. And why would you not use a different word that is less, whatever? Why don't you use a word that isn't the word witch? You could call yourself a wise woman or whatnot. And I'm like, I actually need to say this word. This is who I am. I need to claim who I am, and I need to embody that. And then when I did that, this whole mentoring thing that I do now just happened organically. People were just not so much. I mean, I don't know if they were drawn to me. They were just drawn to what I was putting out, that I needed to be authentic, and their craving for their own authenticity connected them with me. And then I just became the witness for them. I was able to like mentor people by saying, you tell me who you are. I will witness this for you, and I will hold safe space for that. And that's how that all came about. And then when I wrote my books, I attracted a whole other segment of women who were just dying to express their sexuality. And, that's kind of how it came about. I just became me, and then witnessed other people becoming themselves.
That is I love the way you put that. And I get the sense that even though you can kind of put it in, into those words, and it's sort of compact. I also get the sense that this is very, very incredibly sacred work, and that this is and I certainly get the sense that this is something that certainly takes a willingness and effort on your part, and energy on your part, and presence to be able to do this for people. Yeah.
And humbling, incredibly humbling, because I know this is going to sound egoic, but I'm humbled by myself. I'm humbled by this human who has the courage to walk this earth and this path. I'm humbled by all the other humans who are trying very, very hard to be authentic unto themselves. And it's very humbling to hear somebody's story and to witness it, and to know that, your witnessing of it is creating safety for them. And that's such a huge responsibility. And I'm honored. I'm honored to walk this path.
Yes, and I was going to ask you. And now I'm wondering if this may tie into, when you were beginning speaking about your journey, when you were speaking about, where you were born, and when I was picking up on something there. Again, there may be nothing there. Is it really that you think, looking back at that, and I don't know if this is a fair question or not, that you were born with the wisdom that you needed, even though there may have not been, throughout your childhood, the teachers that could have really, basically showed you the way. That I don't know is there any sense that some of this you were equipped with this wisdom, or that we humans are born with this wisdom?
I do believe so. I mean, for one, my name Monica means advisor. So right away I was like slapped with, okay, this is who you are.
I love that. Yeah.
And I do believe that we come into many, many incarnations to learn the same lesson. And then when we are done with that and we're like, okay, well, that's enough of that now. We come out as the teacher of the thing that cracked us open. So I do know that I have experienced this kind of life before, and that it has primed me, it has taught me, and my soul keeps returning of its own free will to experience, yet another thing that will help me to express whatever wisdom is at the other end of that. So I think that's true for all of us. Like, we all come with this inherent wisdom, that we pick up along the way, however many incarnations we've had, whatever planets were visited, whichever galactic nation we've come from. We pick all these things up, and then we bring them into the human form that we inhabit in each particular lifetime. I think the key to it is, though, I think we can die with our seed never have turned into an oak. Like, we have to be willing to be buried, to find the life in the darkness, in the womb of our wounding, and to be able to be cracked open, and then allow that to carry us forward in life into whatever our work is, what our gift is in that lifetime, because we're here to receive, but we're also here to give. So I think that if we're not willing to go through that process, or not even accept that our wounding or our trauma has been an incredible gift, it's going to be hard to come out at the other end with the wisdom part, So it's part of why I do what I do, is to give people permission to be themselves, and to disappoint others on the way to being themselves, and just to go do what you came here to do. Like, you came here on purpose.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, is so much of this really been about actually being a guide for others? I was also wondering too, was there some aspect of that was, I guess, what you would call choiceless? Was this something that just really happened without you deciding, one day, this is my work, and this is what you're going to do, so to speak?
Yeah, in some ways. So part of it is to do with my natal chart, where the planets were and everything was where I was when I was born, because those planets activate certain things within you that are supposed to open up at certain times in your life. And so some of it was an agreement that I made that I was going to do this when I came here. And other things were, you know, one day when I was in high school and I was like writing poetry, and my teachers were saying, hey, like, could you give me a copy of that poem? And it means something to me. And then it was like the light bulb went off, and I went, okay, my writing is for me because it's healing me, but my writing is also for others. And then I found my voice through writing, because it was always very difficult for me to speak. I was silenced a lot as a child. So my voice was like, you know, and it's part of not wanting to show up on camera either, because it felt unsafe. But I knew that my writing was going to be the medium. And I knew that I was going to possess that and, you know, activate that. And I knew that quite early on. So I would tell people, you know, I'm going to live by my pen.
Hmm.
And I believe that, you know, I feel like this is what I came to do and I must do it. And I think also losing my mom at a young age, and she was a very creative person, um, I feel the absence of her ability to be able to create more in the world because she left. And so part of it is for her as well, to be able to, because I came through her, you know, to be able to keep giving her a voice.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I really
Mm,
do deeply honor that. Absolutely.
mm.
And then I was going to ask you too, just you know, what it was like when you did start working with people and started guiding people on their journey. Just anything that you might share, you know, just in those earlier stages. You know, just anything that you know, in terms of you know, any lessons learned or any turning points along the way, or anything that you you know, learned about yourself as you began
Mm.
that process of working with people.
Well, it was accidental, kind of. I started writing for Elephant Journal, and people started writing to me and saying, "Oh, you seem to know about such and such. Can you help me, you know, with this?" And it was frankly terrifying.
Mm.
It was like I was on the spot. I was like, "This is what I thought about doing, and this is what I know is my path. But now that I have to do it, it was terrifying because one, I didn't want to say anything or do anything that was going to hurt another human being. And I didn't have a lot of experience. So I had to like really dig deep into past experiences, like other trying to remember from other lifetimes. And if I couldn't remember it, I would just ask my ancestors, can you help me with this? Like, I know this is my path, but I'm new at this and, you know, I need help. And so, um, because there was, you know, good success and people were receiving what they needed to receive, um, then I felt encouraged. And then it was just like step by step, one step by step. And um, I think that, so one thing that happened was my adoptive mother passed away in 2013. And when she passed away, I completely like broke out of my shell. I was
Mm.
like, this is my books, 3 big books came flowing out in a great speed.
Hmm.
and
Oh,
and I
wow.
met, yeah, and I met my spirit guide who was going to, you know, who was channeling a lot of information to me, that was going to go into the books. And I had always told people, this is going to sound terrible, I'd always told people that when my mom passed on, when my adoptive mom transitioned, I knew that I was going to start living at a new level. And, you know, it was met with a lot of criticism because um, it kind of sounded bad. And then people were saying, well, that's not how it works. You know, you're probably not going to, you know, if this person is, because like sometimes we think, well, if this person wasn't in my life, then I could be myself wholly,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And so people were saying, well, you have to create that for yourself. This person leaving the earthly plane isn't going to change that for you. But I knew that it would. Like in my heart, I knew that I needed that separation. I needed her to become my ancestor. and to become someone I could go to, but in a different way, because there's a level of trust now that she's an ancestor and she's not in her body and experiencing herself in the way she was experiencing herself. And I knew that I was going to blossom, and that's exactly what happened. And then later I connected with her through a psychic kind of tea reader, and I realized how much she was helping me from where she was at now. And she understood me where she couldn't understand me while she was in her body. And I had that permission now to be myself. And so that's my journey, and that's how it worked out for me. I don't know, like it's going to happen differently for different people, but that's how I kind of broke out of my shell.
Yeah, that is so interesting, and I wonder in some ways, some of these things I know maybe on the surface, and I know when you were mentioning that some people, maybe didn't understand that, or if they thought that sounded harsh in some way. I
Mm-hmm.
wonder if it is easy. We get so busy judging with with the brain or the mind,
Mm.
what we think is right and wrong. But then we miss out on some of these things that we can get more in touch with, on the heart level or at the soul level.
Yeah. And my mom and I had a very hard time. I knew she loved me, and I loved her, but we had a very hard time having this physical relationship. We tried really hard though, like we never gave up, but it was difficult. Um, so I knew that when she was transitioned, that we would meet heart to heart and that whole physical barrier would be gone. And everything that I'd been holding within myself because I didn't want to hurt her feelings. Like I kept thinking, if I write these books now, while she's alive, she's going to want to read them and she's going to be mortified, about what I'm writing, and it's going to hurt her. And I really didn't want to hurt her, and I felt like the permission wasn't there. I couldn't give myself the permission to come out completely. I was interviewed on several TV shows while she was alive, and she was like, I knew she'd be watching because she was proud of me. And the person who was interviewing me was trying very, very hard to get me to say something bad about my mom, like to say,
Hmm.
let's talk about your childhood and let's talk about the things that happened. And I knew my mother was watching and I couldn't dishonor her. Like, no matter what had happened between us or how bad it had been, I didn't want to dishonor her. I knew that her intention had been to be good to me. She couldn't facilitate it all the time, but that was her intention. And actually all of that taught me so much about compassion for other people and love for other people, and in turn about loving myself more. And for whatever reason, once she was gone, I was able to love myself more.
Yeah, that I find that so deeply interesting, and I was going to ask you as well, and also very enlightening at the same time. Do you think?
Mm.
And there again, I don't know if this is a fair question, but what's coming up is in terms of, especially with family relations, and
Mm.
family relationships, is some of this sometimes just about the roles that we're here to, sometimes we have a certain role that we think we need to play in our relationship
Mm-hmm.
with other people in our families.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
and sometimes do you find, have you found, not only in just in terms of your own journey, but with people that you have worked with and are guiding or have guided, that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes is it the roles that we take on in our relationships
Mm.
with others that sometimes is what gets in the way?
Yeah, our roles, the expectations of those roles, the masks that we wear to keep ourselves safe, um, what society expects of us within a family structure or within a relationship. Like there's so many things that get in the way of us just being able to express ourselves authentically. And um, either roles that we're expected, like it seems like we take on the expectations for ourselves. We're saying that it's the what other people expect of us, but we take it on for ourselves. Like we're wearing that garment ourselves. We're wearing our humanity and our physicality as a heavy garment. It's our duty to ourselves to make that garment lighter, not to be so caught up in the role or in our own mask or whatever. And I mean, I can only speak for us, like living in North America, because generally in North America, we have the freedom to be whatever we want to be. There's a lot of places on the planet where people aren't. It's not safe to be themselves. But I think that for the greater consciousness, for those of us who are able to be ourselves as authentically as we can manage, it's also feeding the greater consciousness and changing things out there so that other people can find freedom as well. So I feel like it's our responsibility to be authentic. And I don't
Yeah.
even know if I'm answering any of your questions, because
Oh,
when
you
you ask
absolutely
me
are.
something,
Absolutely. Yes. Thank
okay.
you. Absolutely. You are. And I get the sense that these are being answered, with, through the heart. I really feel that. And I know
Yeah,
sometimes when that happens, I know sometimes I wonder and I've had this happen too, where I feel like, I
yeah,
don't know if I'm really answering. And I wonder if that's the brain, that it's trying to figure out if the
yeah,
question's getting answered, when in
yeah,
fact, it's all getting answered from here. And yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I hope it's okay to say that, but
Oh
that's what
yeah,
I get the
thank you.
sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's all like I tend to kind of flow, and then I'm not really, like we talked about before, that we don't always remember what we've said when we've said it, because we're
Yeah.
going like on a stream of consciousness.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing I was going to say to you too. At some point, I think, I realize that it would be really easy for us to get into a role of, I'm the person asking questions, you're the person answering questions, but I get the sense that that's not what generally has happened. And for
Mhm.
whatever reason, I've just found myself, I never really thought about this, but it's just that I find myself when I turn on this record button, this is usually what seems to, and I know it doesn't really have anything to do with me, I don't feel like, but it's just this level of consciousness where there really
Mm.
aren't any roles, where we're just
Yeah,
here talking. Yeah.
it's just conversation, and we're attuning, heart to heart, and that makes it so comfortable for me, because normally I would be very terrified.
Well, I thank you, so, and I honor your willingness to have this conversation with me, that's
Thank
something I
you.
certainly don't take lightly at all. I mean, I know that
Mm.
is I recognize that is and after being a couple of times of having someone interview me or ask questions of
Mm.
me, I realized it was really great to actually sit on the other side of the table, because I did realize that I really was nervous, and that there really was a part of me
Mm.
that the brain got
Yeah.
very engaged at times about, am I going to really know? And it's so interesting how I just flip that around, and suddenly there are insecurities, because I'm
Mm.
not sure if I can answer questions, or I'm not sure that I'm going to really answer what it is that is being asked of me,
Yeah. And it's okay
or will I
to,
know what to say? Yeah.
exactly. And it's okay to be human. Like, we came here to be human. It's okay to feel all the things that we're feeling, and to not, discard our ego and say, oh, that's bad, and we would be more spiritual if we didn't have the ego. I mean, the thing is trying so hard to protect us, like we
It's just doing what it's supposed to do, right?
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. And I was going to ask you, this is also something that's just really coming up, and I really had not planned on asking
Mm.
this, but it's something that's speaking to me. I had read something initially when I was reading about you, that you were speaking about what you refer to as being a nonconformist, and so I'm
Mm.
wondering, uh, not so much that I'm wanting to talk about the words, but I guess I'm going to almost ask you. I know that there is one level of consciousness where we're not conforming just because we don't want to conform, but I'm
Yeah.
getting the sense through you sharing your journey and everything that you've spoken of today, is this, in terms of not conforming to societal or cultural expectations, is this, and maybe on some level it might be a silly question, but I was wondering, is this more about really, through not conforming to those expectations, is it more about finding out really who you were and who you are? And for other people, I mean, I know I can't necessarily ask you to answer for other people, but I'm just wondering if there is an aspect of that it's really about the freedom that you find when you don't feel like you have to conform necessarily to everyone's
Yeah.
expectations.
I mean, I function best when I ask questions of everything, or when I, question what is in front of me, because then I get to decide for myself what I want to be, or how I want to function in the world. I think I come about that quite honestly, because being born in a communist country, and growing up with people who experienced the war and communism and lack, and not being able to trust the government, or, you know, some whatever form that was above you that was controlling you. That's kind of really rooted within me. So I already came by that honestly, that I was going to question everything and not trust the man, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I find I don't want to be like a rebel for the sake of being a rebel, because
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
that becomes another mask. Now I'm just being this, you know, rebel without a clue. And
Yeah.
and so I would like to have personal revolution in my life, and encourage others to personal revolution and to question things, because I think that that's what brings out your authenticity, but not for the sake of saying, well, I'm the black sheep of the family, and now my ego is going to get all entangled in being happy that I'm a black sheep of the family. Like, if you're going to be the black sheep, then I hope you're going to do something with that. Like, you're going to serve the consciousness or serve humanity with it. But I matured into that. Like, I definitely had periods in my life where I was like, you know, I'm so badass, you know, and I'm so
I love that's great.
I'm different, you know, and I'm not gonna. And now, you know, now we're different. Now a bunch of other people decide to be different with us. Now we're not so different, you know.
Ah, yeah. Yeah.
So
It, yeah.
yeah, like, what is the purpose of my nonconformity,
Yeah.
and what is it doing for me in my life? Is it actually doing anything good in my life? And am I a good example? Because I have daughters, you know, I'm trying very hard to be a good example. You know, they might have other things to say, but but I'm trying, you know, and that's all we can do, right? Like, that's all we can do. So yeah, I matured into that. It wasn't, you know, or even just being a witch, you know, like, I thought about this quite extensively and thought, I don't want to just say I'm a witch because somebody's going to think that I'm fantastical because I'm a witch.
Yeah.
What is this purpose? Like, why am I drawn to this? Why do I want to live this way? Or what am I honoring, you know, with living this way? And it's still fun, you know, like, it's still fun to say I'm a witch, but it's not going to be the impetus behind um, how I'm living.
Yeah, and I also get the sense just after hearing you share this that there's so much more to. I know that as humans, you know, we can tend to it seems fairly natural to have an identity or to see ourselves a certain way,
Mm,
or to I don't want to say imagine, but there's or even to say believe, but just to sense that other people see that identity as well. But I wonder if in some ways it is actually that identity can only go so far, in that at some point we find ourselves really confronted
mm,
with, you know, here we are, this is we're in this incarnation, this is the life
yeah.
that we've been given. And when you talk about that maturing process,
Mm,
I get the sense that this really is a process, I guess is what I
mm.
wasn't even sure how I was going to say that, and I'm not even sure if it's a question, but I was just wondering if that resonates with you in some way,
I
that it's
agree.
really it's almost like those things just started coming up, and I just, yeah, rather than
Yeah.
struggle to try to figure out what to do with them, I was just trying to, you know, really just to process those as they come up. But I really
Yeah.
do, and I mean, this really speaks to me. This whole sense of, you know, we come into our own. You know, we get these ideas of who we think we
Mm.
are and what we're doing, but that it sounds like there's so much more to it than that.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping that I'm still going to continue evolving, because when you get to that place of, I heard somebody interviewed the other day who was a astronaut type person, and he had had this dream to be an astronaut for so long that when he became it, he was despondent, because he was like, now what? Now I've achieved this amazing thing, and he had no other goal. And so I feel like we really always need to be evolving and discovering ourselves and finding that other thing that might be, you know, brewing inside of us. Um, so, you know, I think that because humanity's kind of goal oriented, you know, and like there's an end point to everything. We're going to do all this stuff, and then we're going to get here, and here is happiness and, reward. And, I feel like that shouldn't be a thing. I kind of see it like beads on a on a string. So there's there's a bead, and we get to that bead, and then there's a bit more journey, and then we get to this bead, and then more journey, and then this bead, and we're continually evolving and getting to some other part of ourselves that we're discovering, which is, I guess, like the universe discovering itself.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was going to say that as you were speaking about that, I was getting it was actually reminding me, or it was calling into my consciousness, what Hindus refer to as Leela, or divine play. And I was wondering, I was getting this sense of so much of what we're doing. Not to say I realize that, there is an aspect of seriousness to this, and I know that there's consequences for choices that we make. But I wonder, sometimes I'm getting the sense that we can actually see this more as divine play, and not be taking it all so, in our identity so seriously, and limiting ourselves. I don't know if that's I get that sense after hearing what you're speaking today.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Thank you for saying that, because I think we do take ourselves seriously, and we lose that sense of play and creativity. And it's important to just there's a bit of levity and a bit of humor. I think life should be humorous, because you just get so bogged down with who I am and what I'm accomplishing and what I'm doing. And there's lots of days where I say to my partner, "What is this all about?" And he's like, "I don't want to hear you say that, because you're supposed to have it figured out." You're throwing me off. And I'm like, well, today I have no idea what any of this is about.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. And yet he if he sees you as that person with that identity, and then that gets challenged, and then what, right? That's great.
Yeah. And he often says, because I have a hard time just like speaking, what's really, really deep inside me, I can't really speak it. Like, it's very difficult for me to find the words for it. So I'll write it out, and it usually ends up online. And he's like, to know you, I have to like read your social media, because you never tell me anything.
And it sounds like that's just the process, right? That's just the way that it
process.
Yeah, that's just the way that it works, huh? Yeah. Absolutely. And then, as we're coming to a conclusion, I thought also, and I'm so appreciative that you shared all of this, and I'm also very moved to think of, not even think so much, but to reflect about the work that you have done guiding people to through to find their own truth, and to really find out who they are and what they're here to do. If I could ask you, not necessarily, more in a general sense, not certainly not ask you to reveal anything about anyone personally or specifically, but just anything that you might share, just in terms of what it has been like for you to see people to begin to transform, and to really put aside even their own preconceived notions about themselves, and really begin to discover who they really are and their truth. What that's been like for you.
Yeah, like I said before, it's very, very humbling, and it's incredibly heart gratifying. Like, my heart gets so big when I see somebody like embodying themselves, and giving themselves permission to be themselves. It just becomes, I feel like, okay, I've done what I've come here to do, and that feels so good. It feels like, because I have a little bit of a part of me is very afraid of leaving the planet without having done everything that I'm here to do. And so I'm always like, going at Mach 1, trying to get it all done.
Oh, yeah.
But it's really slows me down when I interact with somebody who is having a breakthrough, and it's really nothing to do with me. I'm just witnessing them and helping them to see like their own wisdom. People always come up with this amazing, fantastical wisdom that I'm blown away by. And it's just, it slows me down. It helps me to realize that to be human is such an incredible journey. Like, wow, like we have to come, we were these huge, expansive, energetic beings, and now we have to fit ourselves into these bodies,
Yeah.
and it's kind of tight in there, like, and we've got all these lessons to learn, and we have things to do, and we get caught up in what we're supposed to be doing, like growing up and becoming smarter and getting married and buying a house and all that stuff. um, but when you like take it down to the core of what it means to be human, it's really just appreciating yourself, loving yourself, and allowing yourself to be, on the planet, because what you came here to do. So it's really quite humbling, and it really teaches me a lot about. I mean, I learn as much from people as people learn from me. So it's a really beautiful, copacetic journey.
Yeah, thank you so much, Monica. I just from the heart, I just cannot thank you enough for
Thank
being here and
you.
just being who you are and sharing all
Thank
this.
you.
It really does mean the world to me.
Thank
Yeah,
you so much. I so appreciate being in this conversation with you.
certainly. And I feel the same way. Thank you again so much for your time. This has been wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you.